chances are coming up. She goes in the 1,000 and the 1,500 metres. Next race, as we've said, is Saturday. That was Jo Ely, who's the Academy head coach for GB short track skating. Now, do you have wine o'clock in your house, in your life? The phenomenon has been highlighted as one possible reason behind middle-aged women drinking more, after a global study of drinking habits revealed that women have all but caught up with men when it comes to drinking alcohol.
Now, the analysis in a medical journal showed that men used to be far more likely to drink, but the difference is now much less pronounced. Excuse me. The UK Alcohol Health Alliance, which hopes to reduce the damage caused by alcohol misuse, says women might be drinking more because some drinks are now marketed more specifically at them. If my wife and her friends are anything to go by, Prosecco plays rather a large role in their social activities. Prosecco o'clock.
Well, again, it's one of those things that if you do a search for that, again, there is a ton of merchandising, from doorstops to, like I say, tea towels to pillowcases to aprons to cards. Sarah Capel from Cardiff is taking over the first hour of the show. Sarah, lovely to have your company today, and thanks for bringing this to us. What's your question?
My question is wine o'clock damaging our health, or is it just a bit of fun?
Okay, call 08085 909 693. You can also text us on 85058. You can also tweet us at BBC5 Live or email Afternoon Edition at bbc.co.uk. Obvious first question to you, Sarah, is why would you ask this question?
Because wine o'clock, I think, was becoming very much a problem for me, and so much so that I actually gave up it completely last November. And since then, like you say, the marketing is something I've really, really noticed since quitting, and how normalised it is, and why perhaps it's so difficult to stop when everybody's doing it. As you say, there's merchandising now. The latest thing I've seen is unicorn gin, and I do think it is becoming a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, you can't laugh because it's so squarely sort of focused on a particular demographic, isn't it? But for you, Sarah, tell us about your story with alcohol, with wine o'clock.
Well, I started out in my youth as a typical, what I call a binge drinker. Never drank at home, but went out a lot and drank to excess on those nights, maybe once or twice a week. And then I had children. And I can't say motherhood was tedious, but as soon as they'd gone to bed, I did find the evenings were dragging. It seemed like the rest of the world were out in the beer garden having a glass of wine. And that depressed me. So I thought, right, OK, well, I'll have a glass of wine at home. And for their younger years, definitely, it was a glass or two. And towards the end, which I finished drinking in November, I was drinking at home up to a bottle of night on my own in an evening.
How did you notice the progression kind of happening, or did you just kind of one day turn around after several years and think, holy cow, I'm drinking a bottle of wine a night?
No, I didn't really notice the progression, but it did alarm me perhaps towards the end, where I come in and you impose rules when you think you're drinking too much, not before a certain time or after a certain time. And I wouldn't start drinking until 7 p.m. And I noticed that the bottle of wine was actually gone by 9 o'clock. So that's when I thought, this isn't good.
Yeah, because you were drinking quite quickly as well. And what sort of effect was it having on your day-to-day life?
I was just tired all the time. I had aches and pains. I had palpitations, which I didn't actually attribute to the alcohol until I realised that I'm not actually having them anymore. Physically, I looked a bit pink. I'd wake up in the morning and think, oh, crikey, and reach for the foundation and try and cover up the excesses from the night before. But yeah, I do think it was impacting on my health and would have done much worse had I carried on.
What about your mood?
I had anxiety, which I'd been under the doctor for quite a few years. But again, I didn't put that down to the alcohol until I realised, actually, that's gone as well.
And with other mums, is there, or, and other women just generally, is there a kind of a sense of a kind of a sisterhood around we'll all get together and have a few glasses of wine and it's okay because we're all in it together kind of thing? I say this because there's quite a lot of books out there, and I'm sure they're great fun. In fact, I know a couple of people have read them and say they are great fun. But things like Hurrah for Gin and what is it, the Wine Club for Mums and different things like this, different books that I guess kind of make you feel like you're part of a club. Is that how it ever felt to you, or was it very much a solo thing?
For me, it was kind of a Facebook. You'd see friends posting, here I am with my Prosecco for the evening, or I can't wait to get home and get into this. So yes, there is definitely a sisterhood. The Hurrah for Gin, I thought they were hilarious as well. Yeah. But now I look back and think it's quite sad. It is quite sad.
You've been teetotal since November, haven't you?
Yeah.
How easy is it to have a social life with your girlfriends and alcohol not being involved?
I don't go out a lot, so that is quite a tough question. I have a hen weekend coming up in March, which I will report back to you on. But
yes, please do.
I am quite resolute.
Although what goes on tour stays on tour, so probably best not to.
Yeah, I am quite resolute that I won't be drinking again, because my last hangover was it was quite brutal, and that is enough to put me off from ever doing it again. Even though you say that perhaps 1,000 times when you're younger, it was the sort of, actually, I'm middle-aged, this has got to stop at some point. I really am damaging myself.
So a lack of a social life, is that down to the fact that you don't want the temptation? Do you feel
No, I'm not tempted at all. No, I didn't achieve that on my own, though. I have done a lot of reading on sobriety, and I'm also part of an online support group, Club Soda, which has helped me immensely. So I think it would have been very, very difficult had I not done this.
Because it seems as though that obviously all of us, men and women, are bombarded with images of alcohol all the time. And also as well, there's almost it's an equation that if you are fun, you'll drink.
Yeah.
And if you don't drink, you can't be fun.
Yeah, definitely. It is. It's brainwashing. If you sort of do enough work on it, you can find how we've all been lied to about alcohol. That makes social occasions more fun. If you've had a bad day, you need to de-stress, you need to have alcohol. You celebrate a wedding with a glass of champagne. It is woven into our lives. But it was actually in my sociology lecture, when the lecturer said that this generation will be sort of my age, our parents will actually outlive us. And that frightened me.
Well, we've got loads of texts coming in. Matilda in Birmingham said, Sarah and Nihal, wine o'clock is the most annoying and infantile phrase. I hate being asked for how I cope with 3 small children if I don't drink. That's a weird thing to say. I also get told frequently that I am strange for not drinking. Please grow up and take some responsibility. That's from Matilda. And Ian in Oxfordshire says, wine o'clock and the like seems to be marketing trying to get women catching up with men with the idea of it being impossible to have fun without alcohol. Women are supposed to meet their friends for wine and oh my God, we drank 3 bottles last night. Men are supposed to drink every time they watch sport. It's all very stereotypical, but that is the way this works. Too many people feel they can't have fun without a drink, which is such a sad way to live your life. People need to be responsible for their own actions, but this kind of marketing feels rather cynical. Ian in Oxfordshire, thank you for your text. 85058, if you would like to share your thoughts about Sarah's question. Sarah, could you remind us of your question again, and more importantly, remind people listening to 5 Live of your question?
Yeah, is wine o'clock damaging our health, or is it just a bit of fun?
And I'm starting to get the feeling that you think it's not a bit of fun anymore. You used to think it was, and now you don't, basically, Sarah.
That's right.
Yeah. But yours, just remind us again, yours was about tedium and boredom and feeling like you were sort of on your own in the house and not out enjoying yourself the way you used to. But it wasn't about taking the rough edges off the day or a coping mechanism.
Well, yes, it is. As the children got older, you have a busy life, you've got work, you've got studies, it is that thing. You come in at the end of the day and that's what you do. You don't put the kettle on, you go straight for a glass of wine.
Yeah. And since you've stopped doing it, have you noticed a kind of oh gosh, I wish I could have a glass of wine when I'm fed up?
I haven't, no, I haven't.
What do you do instead?
I have a cup of tea, I have a bath. I spend a lot of time online with the sober community. I think that really helps me stop thinking about drinking. Okay. And I can honestly say, if I don't know how I would feel if I hadn't sort of done that sort of work.
I want you to have a listen to Claire, not her real name, has 2 children, lives in Ayrshire. She's now booze-free as well. Her heavy drinking resulted in her actually getting into trouble with the police. I spoke to her earlier in the week. She got in trouble with the police after she had quite a few glasses of wine over lunch with a friend, and it got out of hand.
We sat for hours, we had something to eat, but mostly we were drinking and tending to the baby. Her daughter popped in as well, and we were in a really nice place, and nobody batted an eyelid to the amount that we were both drinking. And then when I left to go for the train, she came with me, but she left, a member of the public brought me to the attention of the transport police because I looked under the influence of alcohol while in charge of my baby. And they stopped me and they asked to speak to me, and I went with them into their office and waited with them until my partner came to pick us up. They deemed me to be unfit to be in charge of my daughter.
How did that feel?
Oh, it just felt like my world was falling apart. And the months after it, I think it was over a year, just loads of different things because of it. It just, the guilt and the shame, and you just think, what the hell was I playing at? What was I thinking,
That's Claire. You can hear that full interview after 2:30 today. Somebody's just texted to say to you, Sarah, she's in the honeymoon period. She's going to need others around her. Her social life will dip if she doesn't get out there. People will tackle her all the time about it. 850 58 08085 909693.
Sarah, this text has come in. Amanda in Glasgow said, I love wine. I love Prosecco. I also love eating well, keeping fit and making good decisions in my life. Typical UK. Blame marketing, not themselves. Look after yourself. Only you lift the glass. Life is meant to be fun. Don't spoil mine.
The thing is, there are people who can have 1 or 2. I was never that person. If I went out on a night out, I wouldn't stop drinking till the bar shut. And at home, I started to follow that pattern. And after all, what you've got to remember is alcohol is an addictive substance. So you don't know whether you're going to be able to control it or which way you're going to go.
But thank you, Amanda, for that text. Let's speak to Dr. Julia Sinclair, who's Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the University of Southampton and treats patients with alcohol problems. Professor Sinclair, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We're saying wine o'clock, okay, and in some ways we're saying this is potentially an insidious term. What do you think of the phrase wine o'clock?
Well, I agree with what Sarah has said about it, really, is that it's becoming something that's part of the normalising of alcohol as part of our culture. And obviously in the UK, many of us drink, but it's not all of us. And you had that text earlier on from Matilda. And, 20% of women don't drink. So 1 in 5 women don't drink anything anyway. So that's already a kind of quite a reasonable proportion of the population who aren't going to particularly kind of link in with that idea. But it means that the more that you can sell something, and as Sarah was saying, alcohol is in the end an addictive drug, so the more of the stuff you can shift to people, the more people that you can then get drinking more. And you gradually, at a population level, start to have it, as you said in your opening piece, that actually it becomes normal for us to drink more. And gone are the days when, a woman drinking was seen as a slightly, as a sort of strange sight. And, we had the 90s and the ladette culture, and those ladettes, and, I'm part of that same generation. I've never described myself as a ladette, but, we're now sort of in the ages in our 40s and 50s, and it's kind of catching up with us.
Interestingly, I don't think a woman alive has ever described herself as a ladette, whether or not that we've had that foisted upon us.
Indeed.
It's really interesting, though, this survey. I mean, if the UK stats are different to to the stats that this global study done in 2016 found. But the global study that was done in 2016 was based on 68 international studies published since 1980. So I find that fascinating. It was specifically about the changing ratio of male to female drinking over the years. And as you say, obviously, historically, men drank alcohol more than women did. But that has changed so much over the last 20, 30, 40 years, to the point that this study finds globally women now drink as much alcohol as men. And we don't physically process it as well, do we, Julia?
We don't process it as well because we're smaller. We have a kind of higher fat to lean mass ratio just because of the way we're kind of constituted. And actually, alcohol kind of likes fat. So it's one of the reasons why alcohol's a risk for breast cancer. And so I think there is this sense of we potentially, the concentration in our bodies make it more harmful. But I think there's also something particularly with women in terms of kind of, blame is that we should be like your texter has said, it's all your fault, don't blame anybody else. But I think as women, we often blame ourselves for pretty much anything. And consequently, there is this sense of, well, everyone else can manage it, why can't I? And I think that is one of the really difficult things that I see with women who finally come for treatment or, kind of refer themselves or like Sarah was saying, kind of join Club Soda, which is, a great online organisation, or it's another one called Soberistas, which were founded by two really feisty women in Laura Willoughby and Lucy Rocker, both of whom were kind of saying, actually, do you know what? I've reached this stage. I realise that this is not normal for me, and I can't make it normal, and sort of have started a kind of almost like a counterculture, which I think is a fabulous kind of development. That actually there are now these cultures kind of non-drinking cultures, which are giving women an alternative as opposed to wine o'clock being the monopoly culture that we've all got to buy into, or a bit odd.
It's really interesting. There's a text from Tony in Carnarvon who says, this probably will not go down very well, but I wonder how Sarah, the lady presenter, that's me, not you, Sarah, feels about this issue, as she's always talking about wine o'clock and going home to drink alcohol. Tony, you're right. And I would say most nights of the week, certainly most nights of the week, I would go home and I would have a glass of wine, sometimes two. Sometimes I would drink half a bottle of wine on a Wednesday. And sometimes I do think to myself, I might be